So if you're looking for a high-performance electric sports sedan, you really have two options. One is the Tesla Model 3 Performance. Two is the BMW i4 M50. And in today's video, we're going to compare these two vehicles and tell you which one is better. Now, before we dive into today's video, I do want to extend a huge thank you to EV Auto of Woods Cross, Utah for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for you all today. If you guys are in the market for a gently used electric vehicle, be it plug-in hybrid or conventional hybrid or full-on battery electric vehicle, make sure you reach out to them and let them know that SchwayZ sent you. I'm going to put their information down in the description below. So here we have two of the highest performance electric sports sedans you can buy on the market today. We have a 2024 BMW i4 M50 and a 2022 Tesla Model 3 Performance. Now, both of these have been refreshed or are about to be refreshed shortly. The 2025 model year does have a facelift for the i4, and of course the 2024 model year of the Tesla Model 3 Performance has the facelifted version. However, these are the two you're going to most commonly find on dealership lots, and I figured it would be helpful to compare the specifications, the sizing, the features, and then at the end of the video, I'll tell you which one of these two I would pick. Let's kick things off with exterior styling, starting with the BMW. Now, the i4 is an interesting concept in the sense that it's almost identical to the BMW 4 Series, but it just happens to have an electric powertrain. BMW has had pretty good success with that, where their vehicles look pretty normal. They don't look like they're electric or anything odd. Aside from the BMW iX, all other BMW i models look very, very similar to their internal combustion counterparts. And starting off with the front end here, you do have this large nostril up front. And of course, since electric cars don't actually need a functioning grille, at least not as massive as this one, this is all kind of a black plastic. Your air inlet is really located down here, along with your sensors for your adaptive cruise control. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this nostril. I personally love it. I think it looks really cool. I like the exterior styling of the i4 and the 4 Series. You got your BMW badge with these two indentations for the front grille, and then every single one comes with these LED daytime running lights and LED headlamps. Now, this one in particular comes with the laser headlamps, and it's actually illegal here in the United States to function, and so they're really just more so for appearance. But if you're in Europe, the laser headlights are actually brighter, and then they can actively adjust their high beams depending on what the oncoming traffic looks like. So they're really intelligent. For some reason, the United States still outlaws them, but I think regulation is starting to loosen on that. Now, moving down from the headlight, you'll notice there's this little side curtain air inlet that goes across the side of the wheel. It just adds to the aerodynamic nature of the vehicle. And then this one has the carbon fiber package, so that's why the air vent is kind of outlined in carbon fiber. But from the front end, I think this is a very good looking vehicle. Now, coming across the side, my particular vehicle comes with these 20-inch M Sport package wheels and the cooling and high performance tire package. So this is an expensive option, but it adds these larger wheels, which actually reduce the range, unfortunately. We'll talk about that here in just a minute, but I do love those red brake calipers, and I don't even know, this is a 20-spoke wheel. This is a really cool looking wheel overall. And in case you're wondering about the tires here, these are 255 millimeter wide, and these are Pirelli P0 tires. So these should definitely add a little bit more grip when you're doing some spirited driving. Coming across the side, you'll notice this looks almost identical to every other 4 Series. You still have your recessed door handles, and then this one, again, with the carbon fiber package, has this carbon fiber mirror cap, and then you've got this black line that extends all the way across the bottom. And then coming across the rear end, one interesting style touch to point out here is the fact that this is a hatchback or liftback design. So it's kind of like a sport coupe as opposed to the Tesla, which is more like a traditional sedan. So this entire trunk lid opens up. In fact, I'll show you what that looks like right now. Push this button, and it's power operated. But this way you get a little bit, maybe you have a larger amount of cargo volume, or at least taller objects can fit in here. Now, coming across the rear end, you have LED tail lamps, and then with the carbon fiber package, you have the carbon fiber rear spoiler, and this section of the rear splitter is also full carbon fiber. So it looks really cool. And in this exterior color, which in case you're wondering is called violet blue, this is a really cool looking car. I really like how that looks. And then you've got the M50 badging over there, because technically this is the electric version of the M4. When you talk about the power figures and the acceleration, this is honestly in some ways better than an M4, aside from that exhaust note, but we'll talk about sound when we jump on the inside. Now, jumping over to the design of the Tesla, this is the identical design that they've had since 2018 when the vehicle was first released. However, like I mentioned, in 2024, they did do a facelift. I'm going to throw a photo up on the screen right now so you guys can take a look, and they currently offer the Model 3 Performance in that facelifted version. However, this is technically the prior generation, but this is definitely more common than the newer one. Now, starting off with the front end, you still have LED daytime running lights and LED headlamps. I'm sure you've seen a dozen of these on the road. You don't have any type of front grille here, but your air inlets is located down here at the bottom, and you've got your fog lights located down here as well. But overall, pretty simple design, especially when you take a look at how it compares to the BMW's front end. This is more conventional, almost looks like internal combustion engine, versus this is clearly an electric vehicle. Now, I should mention the previous owner of this vehicle did do kind of a satin black wrap on it, but that doesn't really change anything else about the vehicle. And as you can see here, the previous owner also upgraded to these pretty cool looking bronze 20-inch Vossen wheels. But the traditional Model 3 Performance will also come with 20-inch wheels. They're uber teen wheels. They're kind of like this turbine looking style to them. And then you've also got these red brake calipers, and that's one of the ways how you can tell that this is a Model 3 Performance. And then Tesla also says they have a sport tune suspension on the Performance variant. Now, coming across the side of the vehicle, you guys have seen a dozen of these on the road today. They have kind of a more bulbous shape to it. It's kind of more oval-like as compared to the BMW, which is a little bit more sleeker. However, this definitely aids this aerodynamics and in terms of its efficiency and range. Now, in contrast to the BMW, your door handles are in here, and you have to actually pull on them like this. So you kind of have to push here and pop it open. And then the rear end has LED tail lamps as well. And one of the ways you can tell it's a Model 3 Performance is if you have this carbon fiber little spoiler, and you'll typically have dual motor with a red underline underneath. Of course, because this vehicle was wrapped, that has been removed, but this is for sure a Model 3 Performance. Now, one thing to mention that I noted on the BMW, even though it looks like this would have a hatchback-like opening, it actually doesn't. You simply push this button back here, and it does power operate open, but it's a traditional trunk opening for like any other sedan. So that is one difference between the Model 3 and the BMW. So that finishes off exterior styling between the two. Looks are subjective, of course. Personally, I like the look of the BMW a little bit more because it has a little bit more character, some more aggression to it, especially in the front end. That also has to do with the fact that I've seen like a million Model 3s where you just don't see as many BMWs. So it's really up to you on which one of these you think looks better. All right, next up, let's talk about the sizing of these two vehicles. Starting off with the BMW, your width is 72.9 inches wide versus almost identical 72.8 inches wide for the Tesla. The height of the BMW is 57 inches versus the Tesla is 56.4. What's interesting here is even though the Tesla is technically shorter, it almost looks like it's a taller car from the outside. I noticed this even with the Model Y when I compared it to the Mustang Mach-E. Because this design is kind of more oval-like, it makes it look like it's a taller vehicle. Now, in terms of the length here, you're looking at 188.5 inches long versus the Tesla is 184.8 inches long. So the BMW is about 4 inches longer than the Tesla. Next up, let's jump on the inside and talk about the interior features and styling and amenities. First off, I want to show you the BMW key. They use this on other products, of course. You have your lock here in the BMW logo, unlock. You got your trunk release, your panic button. Then you got some BMW M coloration over here on the side. Now, let's jump on the inside of the BMW. And opening this door, one thing I will make note of is the fact that this door sounds like a tank. Take a listen. It just sounds extremely solid, almost a little bit too rough for a luxury car, but I don't mind it. Now, starting off with the door panel, this is all soft touch injection molded plastic material up here. It's very comfortable to rest your elbow on. You've got real aluminum with some ambient lighting strips underneath that can be adjusted. You got your lock and door lock, your aluminum door handle. Everything feels very sturdy, very kind of hard, very tank-like. This one comes equipped with the mocha brown interior leather, which looks really gorgeous. And then you've got your memory seats here. And then this particular vehicle has the upgraded 16-speaker Harman Kardon audio system, which sounds really good. The base setup is a 10-speaker audio system. There's a look at what your window switches look like. And then down here, you get your trunk release button and a pretty decent sized storage compartment that's wrapped in kind of a leather wrap material. It's not soft touch, but it's not just a hard touch plastic. Now, jumping on the inside, you got some more M badging over here, and let's talk about these seats. Now, they are very adjustable. As you can tell, you can adjust not only the headrest positioning and how forward and backwards it goes, but you can also adjust, of course, the thigh support manually by pushing this little lever over here. And you can also adjust not only the lumbar support, but how tight these side bolsters hug you in the seat. So you can push this button over here to tighten it up or loosen it up depending on what you're comfortable with. There's your power adjustability. Now, heated seats are standard, ventilated seats are optional. This particular vehicle does not come with that option. Jumping on the inside, one thing I'll mention is that this cabin feels pretty tight. Let me shut the door here and I'll show you how sound insulated it is. It's actually pretty quiet inside of the cabin and does a really good job at that, but it's a pretty tight cabin. I mean, it's very easy to reach across to the passenger side. It feels like you're kind of in a cocoon. Reminds me a lot of just the traditional 4 Series, of course, because that's what this one is based on. Now, starting off with the steering wheel, it is leather wrapped. You've got that M contrast stitching with the red and the blue. You do have heated steering wheel here. However, that is an optional feature that comes as part of a bigger package. It's also a tilt and telescopic steering wheel. However, it's manual adjustable, which is kind of odd for a vehicle at this price point. On the left-hand side, you have your controls primarily for your cruise control. So you do have adaptive cruise control with lane centering. You also have these lights located up above these switches, which will blink at you if you take your hands off the steering wheel for too long. So it's meant to kind of capture your attention. You do have a leather wrapped steering wheel here. On the right-hand side, this is how you can control either the seek and track of your audio settings, or you can actually control, let me turn the vehicle on. And I don't know if you heard that, but we'll touch on that here in just a minute. But this button can also control what content you have here in the center display, so you can cycle through navigation, your adaptive cruise control, obviously your mileage, your efficiency, etc. But you can also control your head-up display here. Yes, this particular vehicle came with the optional head-up display. It's obviously not standard, but you can take a look and see what, you can adjust it to kind of a more regular subdued mode. You could do a sport mode. You've got your navigation. So lots of functionality there by just simply clicking on this button on the steering wheel. And then lastly, if you're in comfort mode, you can open up an additional set where you can actually change what the layout looks like. So different type of gauge cluster display depending on what mood you're in. But again, if you put it into sport mode, it looks like it locks you out, and this is the only option you have. Now on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you got your headlight controls along with your turn signals. On the right-hand side is your windshield wiper stock. Now I should mention all of this material back here is soft touch, kind of this injection molded plastic. BMW has a specific name for this. It's kind of like this fake leather material. And then again, since this one has the carbon fiber package, you've got carbon fiber all throughout the interior. It looks really beautiful overall. Now, jumping to the center screen, one thing I want to point out, this is a 12.3-inch display. This is a 14.9-inch 4K display. So it's absolutely massive for a vehicle of this size. I mean, it's not a massive vehicle, but this screen is really large. It's larger than some of the competition. And it runs BMW's latest UI. It's very easy to use, very easy to understand. You kind of have this apps menu down here where you can go through a variety of different things like your interior lighting. You can also open up your charging menu to find out more details and set a schedule. So lots of functionality built in here. It's going to take like a 30-minute video just to explain everything here. But I do want to point out the 360-degree camera. That is also an optional feature. It doesn't come on every single BMW i4, but it is very welcome. And there's also a parking assist feature where this thing will obviously find a parking spot and automatically turn the steering wheel and, park you in that spot. That's not a new feature, but it is nice that the BMW offers that as an optional add-on. Another thing to mention about this display is it's actually a curved screen. So it kind of curves a little bit towards the driver. And then this does have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. That's an important thing to mention because Tesla does not offer that. Now, one last thing to mention about this infotainment screen. If you go into your driving settings, drivetrain and chassis, you'll see this iconic sounds button, and it's designated as on. And that is where BMW partnered with famous movie composer Hans Zimmer, and they made a soundtrack for this car. I'll show you when we get behind the wheel as to what it sounds like, but when you're accelerating in this vehicle, it will actually make kind of a simulated sound or electronic sound on the interior, and it sounds really cool. So I'll show that off in a minute. But down here, you got your air vent controls. Unfortunately, you don't have any actual physical buttons for your climate controls, but you do have a physical volume knob and your seek track settings along with your max defrost. And then obviously here you have more carbon fiber because this is the carbon fiber package. You've got a little wireless charging pad. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that great, but at least they have it. USB port, 2 cup holders, cigarette style power outlet over there, more carbon fiber in this center arm console. These are your quick access buttons for your camera, your parking, your different drive modes, your auto hold. This is your engine start stop button. That's technically not an engine, it's for your motor, but it's outlined in blue because it's electric. This is your gear selector, so it's kind of odd looking, but it's different than the previous BMW i4 I reviewed. And then you still have the traditional BMW little controller located over here, similar to what other German cars had like 10 years ago, but that way you can still manipulate the screen without distracting yourself and touching this touchscreen. You can kind of just use muscle memory to manipulate the touchscreen. Quick access buttons located up here at the top. And then moving further back, you got a nice nice leather wrapped center arm console, and then a pretty decent storage compartment with some USB ports. And then over on the passenger side, you got a little glove compartment as well. Up above you, you don't have any type of rear view camera mirror. However, this vehicle does have a pretty decent sized sunroof. Now, it doesn't extend all the way into the second row, but it's a pretty massive piece of glass here in the i4. Now, jumping into the second row of the BMW, same soft touch materials here. The door panel almost looks identical as the first row, and a pretty large storage compartment. And then taking a look at these seats, they still have that nice mocha color to them. A pretty small headrest over here because your roof line is kind of sloped back here. And then jumping behind the first row, it's a little bit harder to get into just because this pillar over here kind of gets in the way, since this is more of like a coupe. And then legroom, it's okay. It's kind of tight back here. This is me sitting behind myself. I've got about 34.2 inches of space behind me. However, it feels kind of tight back here. The nice thing is you do have your second row climate controls, and then heated seats in the second row are optional. This particular vehicle doesn't have them, but at least you do have some air vent controls and some USB ports down there. Now, one thing to note is you have this large center hump here, even though this is an electric vehicle. The fact is this is also designed to be an internal combustion vehicle with all-wheel drive, and so because of that, they still keep this center hump here, unlike a vehicle that's ground up built to be an EV like the Tesla. Now, opening up this center arm console, obviously there were kids sitting back here, but this is soft touch material. And then opening this up, you have some cup holders. Now, I'm about 5'9", and I've got about an inch of space above me. So if you're about 6'1" or so, you might start rubbing up against the roof. You might have to kind of slouch down a little bit. But it definitely feels a little bit more sporty and coupe-like back here, although this vehicle doesn't seem to have any type of window tint, so it does feel a little bit airier inside. But if you had any window tint, it might feel kind of like cocoon-like in the second row. Also, the angle of my knees is a little bit higher than I would like. It almost feels like my knees are a little bit closer to my chest back here. I think that's because the floor has batteries underneath it, so I imagine they may have had to raise the interior a little bit, but I'm not certain on that. Now, jumping into the trunk area with this power lift gate, not too much to report back here. Your charging cable stuff is over here, and then opening this up, you have your subwoofer and a little bit more space down there. However, I should mention that you can fold each seat down individually, which is nice because then you can fit some longer skis into that middle seat without disrupting the second row occupants. You've got some little storage compartments over here on the left and the right hand side, and then you've got this kind of tonneau cover over here that is removable, and then another one that covers the trunk, so if you store valuables down here, they're not going to be visible from the outside. All right, now let's jump inside the Tesla. Now, to show you the key here, since I'm not the owner of this vehicle, I'm going to be using this little key card, which to turn the vehicle on or to unlock it, I simply push this button to, as you can see, lock it, or push it to unlock it. And this is also how I'm going to essentially start the vehicle. But if you're the owner, you're just going to have the Tesla app. Makes it really easy to do. Now, jumping inside here, this interior is entirely different methodology than the BMW. Now, what I will mention is every single Model 3 Performance was pretty much fully equipped from the factory, aside from full self-driving, which was an optional feature that you can pay for. Whereas here in the BMW, it's more basic, and then a lot of the features I talked about, like the 360 camera, the carbon fiber, those are all additional features. We'll touch pricing here in just a minute, but that is some of the advantages of having a Model 3, as it pretty much comes fully equipped. Starting off with the door panel, this is all kind of this fake leather wrap material up top, but it is soft touch material, so you can rest your elbow here and it's gonna be perfectly fine. Below that, you've got this white trim piece material, which matches really well to the seats and matches kind of the interior styling of the minimalistic design of the Tesla. You do have some fake Alcantara suede over here, more soft touch materials over there, along with your window switches. This is your electronic release for your door handle. And then down here, you have a little cup holder and a storage compartment. This is kind of a painted black plastic, so it's not any leather wrap material. Now, talking about the speakers here, Tesla does a really good job with its audio system. This is a 14 speaker setup, and it includes one subwoofer, but it's a pretty good amount of sound for a vehicle of this size. Now, jumping towards these seats, like I mentioned, these are vegan leather interior, so this is not natural leather, but I gotta say, it ages pretty well. This vehicle has about 30,000 miles on it, and they look really clean. My understanding is they're pretty easy to clean because they're not natural leather. Now, heated seats came standard. You couldn't even get ventilated seats. However, as of 2024, you can get ventilated seats. Down here, you don't have any type of bolster support, but you can adjust your four-way lumbar along with your power seat functionality. And then one other kind of telltale sign of the Model 3 Performance is aluminum pedals. Now, obviously, you can change that in the aftermarket, but that is one of the ways that you can tell this is a Model 3 Performance. Now, jumping inside to turn the vehicle on, like I said, you simply put the key in this slot, hit on the brake pedal, and the vehicle is technically on, or at least I can start moving it now. And then closing the door, this is a frameless door, similar to the BMW. And it's also pretty sound insulated. I gotta say, I can't really hear that highway down there, so they did a pretty good job with that. Now, as you can see here, the interior is much more minimalistic than the BMW. You don't have any type of gauge cluster display. This is also kind of that rubberized material that you found on the door panel, so I believe it's an injection molded plastic. You've got more of that white trim that extends onto the door, behind the screen, and even behind the steering wheel. There's really nothing to stare at over here aside from the steering wheel. And talking about the steering wheel, it's not a flat bottom design. There's no type of contrast stitching. It is vegan leather wrapped. And then these buttons control a variety of different things, from your cruise control to the positioning of the steering wheel itself to the positioning of the side view mirrors. So similar to Rivian that I've reviewed in the past, these buttons can function in multiple different ways, which is kind of nice. That way you reduce the amount of buttons inside of the vehicle, although there is also kind of an extreme to that, especially with some of the newest Teslas, but that's a topic for a different video. Back here you have your windshield wiper controls, and then this is your gear selector stock. I like it up here up top because it makes it easy when you're kind of having your hand over here on the steering wheel. This is a heated steering wheel as well, so that is a nice standard feature on the Model 3. Now, jumping over to the only screen inside of the vehicle, this is a 15-inch touchscreen display, and as always, Tesla has some of the best software. I mean, take a look at how snappy that is. It's just like a smartphone, whereas in some other vehicles, it's not as quick as in the Tesla. They do a fantastic job with that. You get your quick access controls down here. It's kind of like your app tray. And then you can push this button and open up even more controls, including your dash cam, which is an optional feature on the BMW. You can get a drive recorder, but this one comes with that standard as well. Now, the one difference between the BMW is you don't have any type of 360 camera. So putting this into reverse, you do have cameras on the left and the right hand side, so you can kind of see your blind spots. And obviously when you turn the blinker on, you'll also get a view of what's going on in that area. And it's a pretty high quality camera, I will say that. However, there's no kind of front camera to be able to see what's going on. I believe the 2024 model year has upgraded to a 360 camera. But what's nice here is, even though you don't have a front camera, you have a very good visual representation of what's going on around the car. So this is a very good kind of 3D imaging of what's going on, and it's almost exactly how this vehicle is positioned. So they do a really good job with their graphics over here to show you what's going on around the car. And then down here, I do want to point out, you have your air vent controls. Unlike a traditional vehicle, you kind of have to adjust them using the screen, and it does a really good job coming from this large vent located behind the screen. And you can, of course, adjust the air temperature over here along with your fan speed here in the center. And then this is kind of your settings menu over here on the left-hand side. This is where you can change a variety of different things in the vehicle, including controlling your dynamics. So you can put into sport mode. You can adjust the steering, similar to the BMW as well. You can also take a look at your charging and set your schedule. And then this is where you can adjust your self-driving features, which we'll touch on later on in the video. One downside to the Tesla UI is you don't get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Tesla says this is kind of the best version that you can have, and so they decided to kind of keep their software in-house. However, as you can see, there's a lot of apps here that you would find if you had Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, like Spotify, like YouTube Music. So they have built-in apps, they just don't have the full kind of software suite that you get with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So take that however you want it. Now, moving down below this screen, you've got two wireless charging pads over here, and then this is all kind of that same vegan leather wrap material. Not as nice as the carbon fiber inside of the BMW, but it is that same minimalistic design. Now, opening this little compartment up has a pretty decent sized storage compartment, and then you can also move this little tray forwards and backwards. So it's kind of a two-tier storage compartment down here. You got two cup holders, a pretty soft center arm console. Opening this up, it's a pretty deep compartment, a little bit bigger than that in the BMW. And then moving over to the passenger side, to open up the glove box, you actually have to push this button over here and it will open up. It's also lined in felt, but just a little bit odd. You have to push a button. Now up above you, again, no digital rear view camera mirror. However, this has a much larger sunroof. The downside here is it does not open, but it is very tinted and it gives you a nice kind of scenic view outside of the vehicle. And it's really cool. This back glass goes all the way to that rear window. So it's a very nice and airy feel. And in general, I got to say, this vehicle feels a little bit larger on the inside. I'm not really quite sure if that's because my seating position is a little bit higher up, whereas in the BMW, I feel a little bit lower to the ground, but this feels more spacious. Like I can just as easily reach across to the passenger side, but that dashboard feels a little bit further away than in the BMW, where it feels really up close and personal. So again, that's just one of the benefits of having a ground up EV versus an EV that shares its platform with an internal combustion engine. All right, now jumping into the second row of the Tesla, same nice use of material materials on the door panel. Soft touch up here, that kind of Alcantara fake suede material. Soft touch materials where you're resting your elbow, along with your speaker grill, and a little storage compartment down here. I love the white color of the seats. They're just as nice in the second row. And then jumping back here, a little bit easier to do because you're not as coupe-like of a roof structure. And then sitting behind myself, it's about 35.2 inches of legroom, so about 1 inch more than the BMW. And I gotta say, I think it's a little bit more spacious back here than in the BMW. Again, it has to do with that coupe-like design of that vehicle. But back here, I don't feel like my knees are as up close to my chest. They feel a little bit lower because this is a ground-up EV. You do have 2 air vents back here, but you can't really control it. Everything is controlled with that center screen. And then you've got heated seats back here. So even though that's optional on the BMW, it comes on every single Model 3 Performance. You've also got 2 USB ports, and the nice thing here is you can actually fit your feet underneath this center arm console because it kind of curves inwards. So plenty of space inside of the second row. Now in terms of headroom, because you have that glass roof, it almost adds a couple extra inches. So I've got about 3 or 4 inches above me. Again, this is more of a traditional kind of oval style design than a coupe, and so that definitely helps in terms of the interior. And I do like looking out of this window. It's kind of nice, bright, and airy, and it helps with having those white seats. Opening up this center arm console, you've got nice soft touch material, and it's got 2 cup holders as well. Now let's jump into the trunk. Now jumping back here, large amount of space over here. Even though it's not a hatchback design, it actually has more cubic feet of storage back here. We'll touch on that in just a minute. But opening up this compartment, you have a very deep tub because there's no components going on underneath there like in the BMW. Again, this being a ground up EV. So plenty of space to put a bunch of different items. It would have been nice if this was a hatchback design similar to the Tesla Model S. Alrighty, next up, let's talk about the storage capacity of both these vehicles. Now jumping under the hood, or the frunk of the BMW is, well, there's no frunk here. Because this is not a ground up EV, they have a lot of electric vehicle components located underneath this black plastic. So it's unfortunate, but you have no type of front trunk storage on this vehicle. And in terms of the rear trunk and the cargo capacity, you've only got about 10 cubic feet of space back there. Now, if you fold down that second row, you can get upwards of 45.6 cubic feet of space, but it's definitely a little bit compromised. Jumping over to the Tesla is a little bit of a different story. Now, this hood is not power operated. You actually have to push the button on the inside or use your phone app to unlock it, and then it simply kind of pops open and you have to lift it up, and then it holds it up with these hood struts. But at least over here, you have a pretty decent sized front storage compartment. I mean, again, at the end of the day, this is a compact sedan, so this is a good amount of space, about 3.1 cubic feet of space over here, and you can easily store some groceries or a small carry-on. Now, not only does the Tesla win in storage in the front trunk, but even in the rear, you've got more cubic feet of space, almost double that in the BMW. We're talking 19.8 cubic feet of space behind the second row, and of course, if you fold down the second row, it becomes even larger. So the Tesla definitely wins in terms of the storage capacity. All right, next up, let's talk powertrain. Like I said, this is the M50, which is the most high-performance version of the i4. We're talking 536 horsepower and 586 pound-feet of torque, sent through a dual-motor all-wheel drive system. Now, 0 to 60 per BMW is 3.7 seconds. However, I've seen reports out there of this thing doing 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds or less. So BMW is definitely on the more conservative side. Top speed is about 130 miles per hour. Now, in terms of range, depends on what wheel and tire setup you have. This one with the larger 20-inch wheels, your range is limited to about 227 miles. However, if you choose the smaller wheel and tire combo, you're going to get upwards of 267 miles on the M50 version. You can get over 300 miles if you choose the non-M version of the BMW i4. Jumping over to the Tesla, they don't really disclose their horsepower and torque figures, but Motor Trend says it's about 450 ponies and 471 pound-feet of torque. So less than the BMW. However, 0 to 60 here is actually better. It's 3.1 seconds according to Tesla. Top speed is about 162 miles per hour, so it does a little bit better from that standpoint. Also, in terms of range, Tesla Model 3 Performance has a range of about 315 miles. If you choose some of the weaker trim levels similar to the BMW, you're going to get even higher range. Now, in terms of charging the BMW, you do have the J1772 plug up here for your standard level 2 charging, or you have the CCS for your level 3 fast charging. Now, what's going on here is an 84.3 kilowatt hour battery, and then in terms of charging, you can get upwards of 11 kilowatts per hour at home, or upwards of 205 kilowatts per hour when you're using a DC fast charger. BMW says 10 to 80% will take just about 30 minutes, and you can get 100 miles of range in just about 10 minutes at a high-speed charger. Of course, you have a built-in route planner in BMW's navigation, and in terms of opening up to the supercharger network, I believe next year BMWs will be allowed to charge at superchargers, so it is in the works. Now, jumping over to the Tesla's charge port over here on the driver's side, of course, this uses the North American charging standard, the NACS port, which is essentially what everybody is converting to, which allows you to charge on the supercharger network. What's going on here is a very similarly sized 81 kilowatt hour battery, and like I mentioned, the range here is 315 miles. Now, if you plug in at home with a level 2 charger, you're going to get about 11 kilowatts at home, which is very similar to the BMW. However, plugging this into a Tesla supercharger, you can get upwards of 250 kilowatt hours of energy, and this thing can go from about 10 to 80% charge in about 15 minutes, again because of that faster charging time and the slightly smaller battery. And it also can hold the peak charging rate pretty well in the Tesla, and it's kind of a toss-up in terms of the BMW. It really depends on the charger that you're parked at. Now, this of course also has the route planner located inside the navigation, which is also one of the best in the industry, so charging is a little bit simpler on the Tesla, but it's going to be getting better when the BMW gets access to the supercharger network. Now, chances are if you're buying one of these, you're concerned about safety as well. Now, the one downside with the BMW is it only got 4 stars from the European Safety Board. However, in terms of warranty, you get a 4-year, 50,000 mile limited bumper-to-bumper warranty, an 8-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty. You get 4 years of unlimited mileage roadside assistance, and you've got 12 years of rust perforation warranty. You also get 3 years or 36,000 miles of maintenance included with every single purchase, although there's really not much to maintain on an electric vehicle. Now, in terms of Tesla, this did receive the IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus. So this is one of the safest vehicles you can drive on the road today. From the factory, you get a 4-year, 50,000 mile bumper-to-bumper limited warranty and an 8-year, 120,000 mile battery warranty. In terms of safety tech on this particular vehicle, you of course have front and rear parking sensors, you've got blind spot monitoring, like I noted earlier, you've got lane centering and automatic lane changing. The one feature this doesn't have is any type of hands-free driving on the freeway like Chevy's Super Cruise or Ford Blue Cruise system. Jumping over to the Tesla, every single one of them came with autopilot, which includes adaptive cruise control. You've got auto steer on the highway, the blind spot cameras. And now if you choose the full self-driving, which as of today is an $8,000 option, then it will auto steer on city streets. It will merge onto and off of freeway on-ramps. I mean, it's a very advanced system, one of the best on the market today. However, it does come at a pretty expensive price, so it's best to find one on the used market that already came with that feature. One thing to note about the full self-driving is it's recommended to keep your hands on the steering wheel. It's not a completely hands-free driving experience. Tesla will start to bug you on the infotainment screen if you don't have your hands on the steering wheel, and if you keep your hands off, it will ultimately shut off the system. Alrighty, next up, let's talk about the pricing. So starting off with the BMW, the i4 M50 as of 2025 starts at $70,700. Now this one, with all the bells and whistles that I showed off, including the carbon fiber, the heated steering wheel, the 360-degree camera, this one is a whopping $87,845. That's starting to get to pretty high territory for a compact sports sedan. However, in terms of performance here, it's pound for pound almost the same as the BMW M4, which is very similarly priced. Now, if you lease this vehicle, that's where it becomes a little bit more financially reasonable, and that is because the $7,500 tax credit is only applicable to leasing, since the components of this vehicle are not built here in the United States. So with that $7,500 tax credit, BMW is currently leasing these for $599 per month plus tax, of course. And that's based on an MSRP of about $72,000 with $6,300 due at signing. Now, obviously, this one that's priced at $87,000 is not going to qualify for that $599 a month, but if you can find one on dealership lots that's a little bit more reasonably equipped, you know, $600 or so isn't bad for a very high performance vehicle. Now, jumping over to the Tesla, pricing gets interesting here and very competitive. So as of 2024, you can currently order a Tesla Model 3 Performance for $54,990. That's an incredible price for the performance. Now, if you choose to add the $8,000 full self-driving, that puts you around $62,990 for a very capable vehicle. So all in all, it's about $8,000 to $15,000 less expensive than the BMW for a similarly equipped Tesla Model 3. Now, if you lease it, it's actually very comparable. You're looking at about $3,000 down and about $650 per month before taxes. Now, the one downside with the leasing for Tesla is at the end of the lease, you can't actually buy out the vehicle, which is a pretty big disadvantage as compared to the BMW lease, where anywhere throughout the term or even at the end of the lease, you can choose to buy out your vehicle as long as you get financing elsewhere, or if you choose to pay cash. Tesla, for some reason, does not allow you to do that. You have to hand the keys back to Tesla at the end of your lease term. So that is one thing to consider if you want to lease one of these vehicles. All right, jumping inside of the Tesla, let's see what this feels like behind the wheel. Now, in terms of the riding position here, it definitely feels a little bit more upright. In the BMW, I feel like I'm sitting a little bit lower, kind of sunken down. This one has what appears to be kind of a taller or a bigger greenhouse. Makes it feel almost more like a crossover necessarily than like a sports car, whereas the BMW fully sports car oriented. Now, we're about to get on this little straightaway here. I'm actually going to put it into the sport mode, which I believe it's already in, but let me double check. Yep, sport, steering wheel keep light. We're going to put it on the brake, and let's go. Whoa! That is quick. That is very, very quick. Now, there was almost a delay at first. It was like maybe a half a second delay, and then it just shot off into the distance. Definitely feels like you got that, tunnel vision. Very, very quick, but the throttle took a second to kick in. But it feels a lot like a roller coaster. If you've ridden any of those, this is exactly what it feels like. So whether you like roller coasters or not, this can definitely give you a little bit of motion sickness because it's a very, very powerful vehicle. I mean, nothing needs to be this quick. It's just so effortless in its acceleration. Tesla did a fantastic job with this, and everybody else is just trying to catch up and beat it by 1 or 2/10 of a second. I mean, they did awesome with him. Now, something I've noticed here, which I noticed in the Model Y that I reviewed, is because you have so much glass, you have a little bit of an echo. So you can kind of hear yourself, talking because of that echo, but it's not a big deal. It's just something to get used to, and I like that there's so much glass inside the vehicle. Now, getting up to speed here, you can definitely hear quite a bit of tire noise coming into the cabin. This is something I noticed in the Model Y as well. They're not super sound insulated, but you can't have it all. I mean, to get great performance, great technology, you can't also have comfort and luxuriousness. Obviously, this vehicle is lacking in terms of luxury. It's not a luxury car. I would say it's more premium. It's not like a Toyota Camry interior or anything like that, although those are starting to get pretty nice as well. But it doesn't feel as luxurious or as tank-like as the BMW. The BMW feels very assuring, very tight, and the suspension here is not terrible, but it's not Tesla's strong suit. Now, driving over some bumps here, I gotta say, I think this is a little bit of a softer riding car than the Model Y I reviewed about 8 months ago, and I can't really say why that is. I believe the Model Y was just a regular long range, so maybe because this is the performance, it has a little bit of a softer suspension, although that would be surprising. So I can't really explain why this feels softer than the Model Y, but this actually doesn't feel that rough. I know a lot of people talk about how Model 3s are pretty rough, and I've experienced this myself, but for some reason the one I'm driving in today, the suspension is actually not too hard. It's a little bit harder than the BMW, but I can't say it's by much. It doesn't feel like it's super jarring or anything like that. It's a decent amount of ride quality, especially considering the performance that comes with this vehicle. All right, now let's jump inside the BMW and see how it feels behind the wheel. Now, I've actually had this vehicle for almost a week now. BMW has lent it to me for me to review on my channel, and so I'm more familiar with this vehicle than the Model 3 Performance. And just a couple things I want to point out as we drive around. So first off, you definitely feel a little bit more encapsulated in this vehicle. It feels lower to the ground. It feels like you're sitting lower inside of the vehicle as well. Kind of feels more like a cocoon. And that's for better or for worse, depending on what you prefer. I like that the Model 3 feels a little bit more spacious. It kind of feels like you're driving a much bigger vehicle than, you know, this car per se. And even the dashboard feels like it extends further out, whereas here it seems a little bit closer. Now, we're gonna get on the straightaway over here. I'm gonna put it into the Sport Boost mode, which is the fastest mode for this vehicle. And let's see how this thing drives. So pedal to the floor, 3, 2, 1. Whoa! Oh man, it's a very quick vehicle. Man, electric cars are just so wicked quick. It's insane. Now, I just drove the Model 3 Performance, and back to back, this one had a quicker throttle response, no doubt. But then on the top end, it almost feels the same. Now, on paper, Model 3 Performance is 3.1 seconds. This one's 3.7, although BMW's a little bit conservative. You know, you gotta have them lined up back to back to really be able to tell the difference. It's so hard to tell the difference between the two. They're both wicked quick, and this one feels so torquey in its low-end throttle response. Almost torquier than even the Model 3. I don't even know. It's just how they tune the pedal. And you may have heard it, and that was something I hinted at earlier, but there's a little sound being piped in. And as I mentioned, BMW coordinated with Hans Zimmer to create the soundtrack, and I love it. I think it sounds awesome. It makes it sound so like mean inside the car. Like I feel like I'm Batman, you know, driving to go and save Gotham, because it adds that emotion that you don't necessarily get from the Model 3 Performance, because it adds an additional usage of another sense, right? So you're using more senses, and it makes it more an exhilarating experience. You know, I think that's why people love exhaust notes in cars, is it adds another level of attachment to the vehicle. And I think the sound here is a perfect addition. I'm glad BMW is starting to integrate this in a lot of their vehicles. And it's not like a fake engine sound or exhaust note. Like, it's definitely a digital recreation. This is one of the first electric vehicles to have some sort of fake noise coming into the cabin. Now, in my week driving over bumps in this vehicle, and here we are right now on the road, kind of going through some bumps, I gotta say, this thing obviously is a little bit softer than the Tesla. And it's surprising because based on the looks of this vehicle and based on the fact that this is an M car, I expected the suspension to feel a lot rougher than it is. It's actually very soft. Now, I put it in the Sport Boost mode, but I adjusted my individual settings to a more softer suspension. So you can definitely, you know, tighten up the suspension here if you select the adaptive dampers to do so, and then it becomes a pretty rough vehicle. But right now, just driving over bumps, it's a pretty soft and compliant ride. It feels like a more standard, luxurious BMW than an M car per se. Now, speaking of comfort, these seats are definitely on the firmer side as compared to the Tesla. The Tesla seats are incredibly soft and cushy. It's like you're sitting on a couch, whereas here it's a little bit firmer. In regards to the road noise coming into the vehicle, it's definitely quieter in this car, but that may also have to do with the fact that this does have that noise being piped into the vehicle, that electronic sound. So obviously when you have more sound in the car, you're going to pay less attention to wind noise, you know, etc. So you don't hear as much coming from the tires. I'm going the same speed I was going on in the Tesla, and it's definitely quieter, but it also fools you a little bit with that Hans Zimmer soundtrack. You know, overall, both cars are really good. I think the BMW, not surprisingly, is more comfortable and quieter on the inside, which is to be expected given it's a luxury vehicle and its price point. Alrighty, to finish off this video, what are my overall thoughts and recommendations between these two vehicles? It's a very tough question to answer. So if you're looking at a very luxurious vehicle that also feels a little bit more conventional, like an internal combustion engine vehicle, but just happens to have a quicker electric platform, the BMW is the best choice. It's more traditional. You can easily get inside and feel like you're sitting inside of a BMW. There's not a real learning curve there, but it also has some pretty cool features like that Hans Zimmer audio system, which personally I actually really like. I also think styling-wise, this looks better than the Model 3 because it just looks more aggressive. It looks kind of like a German muscle car. However, jumping over to the Tesla, if you want to have the state-of-the-art technology, Tesla definitely takes the cake there. It doesn't mean it's perfect, and it doesn't mean that it's the most practical since you don't even have a gauge cluster display, but it definitely is ahead of the curve in terms of its software, in terms of its self-driving capabilities. Tesla is one of the winners there, and in terms of efficiency, this is definitely going to get you more range than the BMW. Now, when it comes down to which one of these two I would recommend, really comes down to your budget. If money is out of the question, I'd still pick the BMW i4 because I think it's a little bit more unique. There's fewer of them on the road. However, the majority of us, money is definitely a big consideration when purchasing a vehicle. And I gotta say, the Tesla Model 3, as always, with Tesla products, is a great bang for your buck. It's very hard to find something that performs like the Model 3 performance for a better price. I mean, starting at $55,000 for a brand new 2024 model year, which has more features than the one I showed you behind me, has ambient lighting, has a little bit better build quality, feels a little bit more well built. Kind of some of the complaints I had about this vehicle have been resolved with the 2024 model year, and at $55,000, it is a steal. So there you have it. It's kind of a mixed answer, but both of these are great options, and I'm just glad that there are options in this type of space, especially in today's day and age where sedans are being killed off for larger crossovers. It's nice that BMW and Tesla still produce some pretty fun and exhilarating high-performance vehicles. But what are your thoughts on the Tesla Model 3 Performance or BMW i4? Which one of these two would you take and why? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed today's video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check me out on all the social media at SchwayZ_. And until next time, everybody, I hope you stay SchwayZ, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.